Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Oregon Public Defense Commission. My name is Eric Dietrich. I'm General Counsel for the agency, and I just wanted to let everyone know that Director Camphy is out today. I also want to remind everyone that for today's meeting, if you're going to speak, please use the icon, the raise your hand icon, unmute yourself, and identify yourself for the record. This agency and this commission was created by Senate Bill 337, and it was really the product of years of work, recommendations from the Tri-Branch Work Group, the Sixth Amendment Center, and the bill itself is shepherded through the legislature by two of the members of our commission, Senator Brzezinski and Representative Evans. Today's meeting is virtual. It's our first time using Zoom, so we hope it goes well. And today's meeting is really intended to be mostly administrative in nature, as there are some fundamental things we need to do to set up our work for the rest of the year. As you know, we've been trying new things in how we distribute materials to you, and we know there's been some kinks, and we'll continue to iron those out so you have access to all the meeting materials in a way that works for you. And because we don't yet have a chair, I'll run the meeting until the point in the meeting when the commission selects one, and then pass it off to them. We all met at our onboarding session in December, but for those in the public defense community watching, I think it would be helpful to begin with introductions of the new commissioners. So I think what I'll do is call out names and ask each commissioner to turn on their mic and say a little bit about themselves and their background, so that folks listening can learn a little bit about you. So Commissioner Buckley.
Good morning. My name is Peter Buckley. I'm joining here from Ashland, Oregon. I'm a former state representative. I served for close to 8 years as the House co-chair of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. I joined the commission in the summer of 2022, the previous commission, and I'm glad to be continuing to work with the commission to try to address the need to develop a strong public defense system for the state of Oregon. Thank you.
And Commissioner Rob Harris.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Harris. I am a lawyer. I've been practicing law about 37 years out of Hillsborough, mainly Washington County, but also in various counties during my career. I recently retired from the practice of law, which means you still do legal stuff, but you don't get paid for it. And so that's one of the purposes of me being here. I've been a trial lawyer. I've done trial public defense for many, many thousands of clients probably, and the last 10 or 15 years in management for both for my law firm and for the Washington County Consortium, which I started in 2006. And so here I am, and happy to be here. Good to see everybody again.
Thank you. And Commissioner Tom Leininger.
Good morning and Happy New Year. My name is Tom. I live in Eugene. I teach at the University of Oregon. I did not expect to seek a place on this commission, but I was contacted by a staffer at the Oregon legislature because there has been apparently in the enabling legislation a position carved out for law professor. My background is that I was a civil attorney doing civil rights work, environmental work, and other categories of work, and also practitioner in the criminal justice system. And I do write from time to time about the right to counsel and the need for effective assistance of counsel. I have two goals in serving on this commission. One is to protect the constitutional right of all defendants eligible for an appointed attorney. And second, to make sure we create conditions so that practitioners can provide effective representation and operate under conditions that are conducive to their well-being and also to optimal representation of clients. Thank you.
Thank you. And how about Commissioner Susan Vandenberg?
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan. I am a retired criminal law and procedure professor at Lewis and Clark, where I taught those classes for over 40 years. Before that, I was a public defender. And In the time that I was a law professor, I served on the board of Metropolitan Public Defender for about 20 years. I'm happy to be on this commission because I want to do what I can to make sure that everyone who is provided a lawyer by the state of Oregon has the kind of representation that I would want for my friends and my family. I think we need to solve this situation and make sure that Oregon is providing that kind of representation for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Jennifer Nash.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Nash. I have served on the former commission starting in the summer of 2022 and became the chair in August of 2023. I was a public defense provider from 1999 to 2017 in Corvallis, where I continue to practice. I was the administrator of the Defense Consortium in Benton County from 2000 to 2017. And I continue to practice family law, juvenile law, and criminal defense. And my commitment to this and why I continue to do this work is because I have a strong commitment to public defense. I want to continue to work in the area of developing public policies and providing support for persons who are accused of committing crimes, or people who are severely mentally ill, or people who are having their children taken away from them, or who have been abused or neglected by their parents. And I think it's important that as commissioners, we provide the kinds of policies and support so that those people, those Oregonians, can have the best possible representation when they don't have the ability to hire their own lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jennifer Parrish-Taylor.
Thank you. Jennifer Parrish-Taylor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy at the Urban League of Portland. I'm a carryover from the 2022 commission. And I would say I'm one of the few folks that works in community, especially the community that's most impacted by the legal judicial system, which is Black and Brown people in the state of Oregon. There's an overrepresentation of us and people who look like myself. And my commitment is to seeing that be reduced and to ensure that folks that look like me have the representation that is afforded to them by the Constitution. And that, as a reminder, any one of us is one life event from needing a lawyer to represent us. And I would hope that we would want to have the best representation, and that should be extended to everyone, regardless of circumstance. And so I look forward to seeing how we can solve this workforce issue in my mind, and really build a system that is truly reflective of our Constitution and is healthy and vibrant and ensures that folks have the representation that they need. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Robert Sealander.
Thank you. My name is Bob Sealander. I'm a 50-year member of the Oregon State Bar. I began my career in Southern Oregon in a district attorney's office for 8 years. Went to Clackamas County, helped form Clackamas Indigent Defense Corporation, which is a consortium, I think, that is still in existence. I left that to go on the Clackamas County bench. I was a judge for 22 and a half years before I retired. And I am the retired judge appointee on this commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Addie Smith.
Good morning. My name is Addie Smith. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very excited to be here. My experience includes running the task force on dependency representation for Governor Kate Brown in 2018. I served as counsel to the judiciary for a series of sessions. And then I was an appellate attorney, as well as the individual that carried all the juvenile PSRB cases for the state of Oregon at Youth Rights and Justice. I think based on my resume, it's not surprising that I will have a lot of focus on making sure that parents and children in our juvenile system are not forgotten in our conversations, and the unique nature of practice in those areas is always being considered as we're making decisions. Currently, I work with states and tribes across the country on improving their juvenile justice, child welfare, and judicial systems. And I'm really excited to be a new member of the commission.
Thank you. And then we have 4 non-voting members of the commission. The first is Brooke Reinhardt.
Good morning. My name is Brooke. I'm a lawyer practicing out of Eugene. I run the public defender's office in Lane County, and I've been a public defender for 14 years. I was a bit surprised to be on this commission because it seemed most of the time I'm joining as an audience member, criticizing one thing or the other. But I figured if I was going to be a critic, I needed to put my 2 cents in and actually try to serve on this body to make public defense better to the extent that we can. I think I have amazing clients who teach me every day, how our lives could have been very different, like one life event. It's so easy to get in a spot where you're accused of the state of a crime. And I think that our clients deserve the best representation possible. And that's why I'm really excited to help continue to reform this system. I think there's been a lot of headway over the last few years, and I'm really excited at the potential this commission has and this version of OPDC with Director Camphy at the helm. So thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Jasmine Wright.
Thank you. I'm entering my 19th year of practice. I've practiced roughly 15 years in the state of Ohio before I came to the state of Oregon. Since I joined the state of Oregon, I've been a deputy district attorney, a member of the deputy district attorney's office in Klamath County, a member of the Department of Justice, and now I'm primarily a juvenile practitioner. I represent both dependency clients as well as delinquency clients. And I have been involved in public defense my entire career from the very get-go, and I have been in more rooms than I can think of when resources were too thin, and when I had to have conversations with clients where we didn't have the resources that we needed to, and we just didn't have what we needed to in order to give them the defense that they deserved. I've had that conversation more times than I can count, and I've seen more tears than I've wanted to. And so I am thrilled to be on this commission, and I am thrilled to give a voice to rural Oregonians and rural Oregon practitioners to this commission, so that we can start to address what has been decades of problems, and hopefully we can begin to address the problems that kind of have led us to this direction. So I'm thrilled to be part of the solution, and thrilled to give a voice to those rural Oregonians and get us to where we need to go. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Representative Evans.
I'm Representative Paul Evans. I represent House District 20 and the 77,000 people that live in there. Monmouth, Independence, West Salem, South Salem. I'm not a lawyer. Didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. Not trying to be a lawyer. My background is in public policy, air battle management, and communications, looking at systems and structures and figuring out how we can integrate what 49 other states do better than we do, with still keeping the Oregon nature of trying to ensure that we provide the best service to every Oregonian. I'm here because the legislature wanted to make sure that there were representatives watching the process. I'm also happen to be the co-chair of the Public Safety Subcommittee, basically the money function, and I'll be reporting back and forth. Thanks.
Thank you. And Senator Przonski.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Floyd Przonski. I am a senator out of the Senate District 4, which includes large portions of Eugene, Oregon, as well as Springfield and some rural areas. I've been the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee since 2009, and I continue to serve in that position. Senate Bill 337 came out of my committee that we are working under, and my participation is, as Representative Evans says, as one of the non-voting members is of the judiciary, of the legislative branch. My background and my current job outside of the legislature. My employment is as a prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor in this state for over 30 years. The bulk of the time has been with the municipal court system, but also have experience within the district attorney's office in Lane County over a 4.5-year period. My goals here is, as a practitioner in the criminal justice arena, it is emphatic that we make certain that every individual that has been charged with a crime has access to legal services. As many people who may be on this call and are watching us today, and those who do not, we do in fact have individuals that are sitting in custody without representation. As the judiciary chair, as well as a prosecutor in this state, that is appalling, and we have to make changes that will in fact get us to the point of where we are meeting our constitutional obligations of a state. And so I'm happy to be one of the non-voting members to help give advice and counsel to this process as a commissioner. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of this new commission and agency. The next item on the agenda is scheduled for public comment. I believe we had one person sign up for public comment, and that was James Comstock. Do we know if he's available?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thank you. My name is James Comstock. I'm a licensed investigator working in fact and mitigation investigation on public defense cases for indigent litigants in the Oregon Circuit Courts. I'm a member of the Defense Investigators of Oregon, proudly affiliated with the Industrial Workers of the World. I'm providing brief public comment here to supplement the lengthy written public comment which I submitted, which I hope you have received. I frankly regret the need to address this new commission in this context, given my hope that my comments at the final PDSC meeting in December would negate the need for any more commentary on this subject. There's a quote that says, "Excuses are the nails that build our house of failure." We've been hearing excuses for things that did not seem to add up or make sense in OPDS for 5 years. We don't want to hear any more excuses. It's come to my attention that the preamble to the schedule of guideline amounts that was voted on by the PDSC in the December meeting materially misrepresents the process used to determine rates for pre-authorized expenses. I'm coming to you today to ask for 6 things: acknowledgement by OPDS of this problem, an end to excuses and implausible explanations, an apology from OPDS to commissioners and providers for misrepresentation and the damage that has caused, an independent investigation into the misrepresentation to providers, commissioners, and the legislature, public accountability for misrepresentation, and an agency plan to stop this pernicious problem and to stop it from happening again. I'm asking this commission to formally direct the agency to address the problem of misrepresentation and to make real, tangible efforts to repair the damage that has been done and that continues to be done to the relationship between OPDS, providers, and the legislature. When I addressed the PDSC at their final meeting in December, I hope that by shining a light on the lack of trust between the agency and the providers, OPDS might begin the process of repairing that trust. Instead, OPDS made what I feel was a misrepresentation yet again when it came to light because of a question by Commissioner Buckley. Further investigation showed that this apparent misrepresentation was not limited to an answer to a question in the meeting. Rather, the erroneous material was included in material sent to the commissioners over 3 consecutive meetings. This, along with the OPDS response to my inquiry, which I found frankly not credible, have led me and my colleagues to doubt many, many other representations made by OPDS. We are asked to trust OPDS when they say that they have done critical financial analysis that determines how much we are paid for our work. We're asked to trust OPDS when they tell us that they have used appropriate methods to change policy. We're asked to trust OPDS when they ask us to be patient with slow payment because they will eminently have a new financial case management system, which we learned in December ended in a failed procurement. In short, we have no trust left to give. For that reason, I am here in front of you asking this commission to take the unusual step of taking direct action to investigate misrepresentation by OPDS and to hold the agency and individual staff who are found to have been complicit in misrepresentation accountable. I ask for this so that we might begin the long and difficult process of restoring trust in OPDS and changing the agency's culture so that together we can effectively address the public defense crisis and provide appropriate representation to indigent defendants in the Oregon courts. Thank you for the time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Comstock, and for your comments. And I know we received your letter. We distributed to the commissioners, and we have some basic things to do today, such as electing a chair and some other administrative provisions. But I know when Director Campy gets back and we select a chair, there will be communication and follow-up with you in response to your letter and your concerns. Representative Evans.
Thank you. What I would appreciate also is if there's an opportunity, as this is a new commission, I purposefully was not watching the last month because I wanted everybody to have a chance to kind of finish one before you start the other. Sir, if possible, maybe I'd like to schedule a meeting to understand. You have several different things there listed, and I want to make sure I understand the definition of terms for misrepresentation, et cetera. So my office will probably be reaching out to try to find a time to just basically better understand what it is you're trying to say. Okay?
I appreciate that, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is first, because as we talked about at the onboarding retreat, governance is foundation. And this is the provisional adoption of bylaws listed as an action item. As background, and there are background information materials we sent to you, ORS Chapter 151, particularly as amended by SB 337, defines the responsibilities of commission members. The statutory directives provide high-level guidance to the commission's role within the overall structure of the agency. They do not, however, provide guidance on other issues, such as how the agency works with the commission to set commission meetings, determine agenda items, distribute meeting materials, conduct meetings, record votes, or create subcommittees. Bylaws are a best practice for government boards and commissions and are essential to establishing norms of governance. They also fill in the gaps that statutes cannot provide in establishing roles and responsibilities, and can establish the agency's expectations surrounding communication. Agency staff is recommending that the commission provisionally adopt the former commission's bylaws while it endeavors to craft its own bylaws, with the goal of adopting its own bylaws. I wrote in the materials of the April meeting, but I actually think we can get them done by the March meeting when we have the retreat. The bylaws before the commission today have only been changed from the previous commission's bylaws to replace PDSC and OPDS with OPDC, the name of the new agency, with the exception that the requirement that the commission approve contracts has been deleted, and you can see that lined out in the bylaws, as that requirement was changed specifically by SB 337. Otherwise, they are the same. In a separate action before the commission today is a proposed motion to create a subcommittee on governance that can assist in the creation of these new commission bylaws. I did receive a comment before this meeting. In the bylaws, it says that they can only be changed by a 2/3 vote of the commission, and that's in section 6. And one of the recommendations I think this commission should consider in its motion to provisionally adopt these bylaws until we craft our own, specifically this commission, is to also modify that to say that a simple majority vote is needed by voting members to approve new bylaws. And with that, I will open it up for discussion by the commission. Actually, before I do so, I should provide a little bit of context as to what's in the bylaws for everyone in the room. Article 1 of the bylaws simply states the agency's name. Article 2 defines membership, which is largely a creature of statute. Article 3 defines roles and responsibilities, and it breaks those into different groups, including the commission itself, the chair of the commission, the vice chair of the commission, agency staff, and the executive director. Article 4 talks about meetings. It establishes procedures for agendas and planning meetings. In terms of conducting meetings, it establishes that a quorum of voting members is required to conduct a meeting, and establishes that the chair shall lead the meeting or the vice chair in the chair's absence. Clarifies that deliberation of issues will only be conducted by commission members, but that they can authorize staff or members of the public to provide information on issues when they elect to do so. All action items are to be labeled as such on the agenda. In terms of motions, the process we had previously used is that any voting member of the commission may make a motion regarding a posted action item, and that motion needs to be endorsed by a second voting member before a vote can occur. We tried to make it simple because processes can get wonky when people start amending motions or tabling motions. So the practice we had in our bylaws was that once a motion was made and seconded, it would be opened up for discussion. If it seemed during the discussion that commission members thought it should be amended, rather than amend the motion, the process was for the proponent of the motion to withdraw their motion and allow a new motion to be made, so that there are always clean motions before the commission. If the proponent of the motion refused to withdraw their motion, then it would proceed to a vote. It also clarifies what we talked about at the onboarding retreat regarding conflicts of interest. When there is an action item, commissioners need to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest. If there's an actual conflict of interest, the commissioner is directed not to discuss the matter and to not vote. If it's a potential conflict of interest, they can continue in deliberation of the matter and proceed to vote. Article 5 authorizes the commission and agency staff to create subcommittees. And Article 6 is the provision on amendments, which does say that the bylaws may be amended by 2/3 vote. And that was the issue raised prior to today's meeting, that should probably be amended to say a majority vote. Do any commissioners have questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Sealander.
I was the one who made the comment to you before, and just to be clear, these are presented to us as a provisional bylaws by a majority vote. And I understand the intention is that we're going to have a subcommittee that is going to present our own bylaws, as you said, perhaps as early as the March meeting. And it seemed inconsistent to me that we would pass provisional bylaws by a majority vote, but then to pass our own bylaws, or what our subcommittee may recommend, we need a 2/3 vote. So my suggestion was going to a majority vote until we submit our new bylaws. And in that, we can have a requirement of 2/3 on amendments.
And Commissioner Sealander, I think that's an excellent observation, and I appreciate that. Commissioner Przonski.
I'd like to follow up with that as well. I was going to ask for clarification. It appears that we will have a motion to adopt the current bylaws. It seems to me that this would be an appropriate time to end that motion, to include that we would be changing that Article 6 from a 2/3 majority to a simple majority. If that would be appropriate, I would think that the proposed motion should be modified to include that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you. I also wanted to discuss briefly the appointment of commissioners to committees or subcommittees. The way the articles read, Article 5 reads now, is that a subcommittee must have at least 3 members in order to be a subcommittee. But we have traditionally appointed commission members to other committees, like the audit committee, IT committee, and I think that we need to, those aren't technically commission subcommittees, but I think that we do need to clarify that and address that to indicate that that can continue to happen, because I think that needs to happen sooner rather than later. I don't want to wait until sometime in April before that happens.
Yeah, Commissioner Nash, and following up on that, one of the things I am hoping that we can provide clarity on in the bylaws are what are actual commission subcommittees versus what are like agency work groups that have commission members as a part of them, such as the audit or the IT subcommittees that you were talking about. Because those do often have fewer than 3 commission members. In terms of what is before the commission today, the only subcommittee we're talking about today would be the governance subcommittee, which would meet several times before March to iron out those issues, if that's acceptable at this time. But we could also consider, you know, when a motion is made, there is a sample motion in the materials, and whoever makes the initial motion, if they'd like to consider that now at this time, we can do that as well. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thanks. I agree with the comments that have already been said, particularly about majority changing these rules, since they're interim rules anyway. It seems like there might be value in allowing non-voting members. I think I talk too much as it is, so I'm not trying to say myself. I think the other 3 in particular, the ability to make motions or make amendments, because although we don't vote, it seems like part of the deliberation should include the ability of putting motions on the table. I don't feel strongly about this, so if the majority disagrees, I got no problem just being able to contribute to discussions and not making motions. But I just thought I'd throw that out there since we're talking about interim rules anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Reinhardt. That is something I would want to check in more on in terms of the legality of that before doing it. I think it's something that the governance subcommittee can iron out as we consider the roles of all the commissioners going forward. With that, would anyone care to make a motion on, and I again emphasize provisional bylaws before the commission determines its own bylaws?
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the interim bylaws with the amendment that in section, I'm sorry, Article 6, that the requirement to have a 2/3 vote of the commission be amended to a majority of the voting members of the commission.
Commissioner Sealander.
I second the motion.
With the motion being seconded, is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the way the bylaws have been drafted at this time, I'll ask if anyone objects to the motion. And if no one objects to the motion, it will be adopted. If someone objects to the motion, then we would go to a roll call vote. I would note that Commissioner Harvey is not present, but for those present, does anyone object to the motion that's been seconded? With that, the motion passes and the provisional bylaws have been adopted, and I do expect that we will have time between now and March that we come back to the retreat. We can get this commission's own stamp on how it wants to operate. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the election of chair and vice chair of this group. As background, Chapter 151 requires the commission to elect its chair and vice chair. The term for the positions are 2 years, and the commissioner elected to either position is eligible for re-election for a future term. Only voting members may serve as chair or vice chair. If the chair or vice chair steps down from their position, an election would be held to finish out the 2-year term. A simple majority of quorum or 5 of 9 voting members is required to elect the chair and vice chair. the roles of chair and vice chair will require a greater time commitment from that of other commission members. Ultimately, the commission in adoption of its bylaws will further define those roles, but they will require greater commitment. I know this is the first meeting, and some of you've known each other for a while, and some of you met for the first time in December. We do need a chair. You know, we could probably take some time to select a vice chair if that's not figured out today, but I at least wanted to open it up at this point for a discussion amongst you all about how this commission thinks should proceed with selecting its chair and vice chair.
I just wanted to point out that some of us only have a year in terms of our service. So is that a non-issue, or do we want to limit it to folks who have 2 years?
Commissioner Parrish-Taylor, from my perspective, it's not an issue. I mean, the term is for 2 years, and if you're on the commission for 1 year, and your term is not renewed, and the person is no longer on the commission would just have to elect another person to occupy that spot. Commissioner Jasmine Wright.
I would nominate Commissioner Nash for the position of chair at this point.
Well, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Wright, but this goes to Commissioner Reinhardt's comment that I still think I need to do in terms of nomination. I hear that as a statement, an expression of support. I'm just not sure yet whether it's appropriate for a non-voting member to make a motion, but Commissioner Leininger.
So I emphatically support Commissioner Jennifer Nash to be chair. I've only been involved with the commission briefly, but in my experience, she's wise and candid and inclusive, and I believe she has all the qualities to be a great chair. I would also be interested to know who might be willing to serve as vice chair. I expect that position is sort of a springboard ultimately to the chair position. And I hope that we'll make a nomination with the expectation that the vice chair is sort of a chair-elect. I don't feel well suited to hold that position, but I wonder if fellow commissioners who might be willing to hold that commission could indicate that they are. Thank you.
Representative Evans.
Thank you. This is not a motion because I'm not eligible and I wouldn't actually want that opportunity, but I can make a statement, and my statement would be, given the problems and the challenges and the items that I was even asked to bring up today that I will probably not bring up today, but will bring up in March having to do with budgets, it would be interesting and I think good for the state if somebody who had extensive state budget experience, not to name names, but a certain commissioner who may have used to direct the state budget was the vice chair, or at least some position where we can ensure that when we're trying to communicate what we're doing to legislators, there's a translator to go from commissionees to legislativees. And again, I'm not anybody who can suggest certain things, but I would just say, boy, it would be wonderful if maybe a certain commissioner might be interested in serving in that capacity. Just a statement, not a motion or an attempted motion of any kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evans. Commissioner Harris.
Thanks, Eric. Couple of comments. Number one, as you said, Eric, I don't know that it's critical to nominate for this position immediately today. By our March retreat, we may have a better idea as a group who would be a good fit for the vice chair. I think Jennifer Nash, Commissioner Nash would be the overwhelming selection for chair, and I think that's almost going to be by consensus, I'm guessing, just by reading the room. So her input as to who she would see as a good fit with her leadership might be also valuable insight to have. So I guess my just thinking out loud here is that if someone were to make a motion to approve Commissioner Nash as the chair, either we could do a temporary vice chair or just leave it vacant at this point until March. But I think the chair should have should certainly have some important input as to who the vice chair would be. But again, if we can wait till March and we have a better understanding of the dynamics of this group and how everyone fits in and the skill set and the strengths, that could be a valuable continuance for us to take. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash.
I just wanted to say that I'm willing to serve as the chair since I've been nominated. People might want to know that. And I've expressed that to people already. In terms of the vice chair, I agree that having Commissioner Buckley, who served as the vice chair before in the previous commission, and having a commissioner who has budget experience would be helpful. I have been meeting with LFO regularly, and I will say just from those meetings, probably more importantly than a person with budget experience, it's a person who's very candid, can have really difficult, honest conversations about what is happening with the agency, who can develop a relationship with LFO that is based on integrity and frankness, and who's got I guess the way I put it is no ego. And what I really mean by that is almost all of the leadership meetings that I have as part of, that I've had as part of, as the chair of the commission, you really have to just accept the appropriate criticism, not take it personally, not be defensive, and just do what needs to be done and be honest all the time. And I think everybody on this commission would be that way, but I mean, it requires, you to just be willing to take whatever comes your way every time you have a meeting, because it's not going to be pleasant. And that's just part of that's why we're all here. We all knew that coming in, but I just want to be really clear that that's part of the gig. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. I would like to also offer support for Commissioner Nash. I'm very glad she's willing to consider the possibility of continuing as chair. I think she's done a great job, and she's been willing to engage in a really positive way. I'm happy to continue as vice chair if that's the desire of the commission, although I don't think that it would be right for me to say that I would be a chair in waiting, because as someone with a full-time job who lives 4 hours away from Salem, it's hard for me to actually engage at the level that the chair needs to do. And I can't see that dynamic changing in the future. So again, I would be happy, and I appreciate Representative Evans' support, but I'd be happy to serve if the commission would like me to. But even if I'm not a vice chair, I would still assume that I would be performing my role of trying to translate commissionees into legislatees and deal with LFO as directed by the chair and the executive director. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sealander.
I think we have two conversations going, and I would like to go back to the first half of Commissioner Meininger's statements and second the nomination of Commissioner Nash.
Commissioner Nash, your hand is up. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I did want to address, I forgot to address the piece about the chair in waiting. I would really appreciate a chair in waiting, not just, and I appreciate Commissioner Buckley's frankness about the ability or his lack of ability to do that. And it's not just who's going to take over after me. I think that's important, but sometimes I have other obligations, and I would like the ability to have a vice chair that could step in instead of me, particularly with the legislative obligations. Sometimes I have trials scheduled during legislative days. They try to make that not happen, but it has happened almost happened, I should say, a couple of times. Did happen last time. And other obligations. It would be nice if there would be somebody else who could step in there was very little daylight between the vice chair and chair. And if we have to wait to a few months to decide who that would be, I'm all right with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith.
I would just add, in terms of the anticipated governance committee action that we might be taking, that a lot of this might be best thought through there. It may be that having a vice chair who can be a chair in waiting is something that we want, but we also want to consider a role that is a legislative liaison or a budget liaison or something like that, that could either be baked into the bylaws, or the bylaws could be left permissive enough so that everyone's strengths can really be used in the best setting. So we don't have to do that, but just to think outside the box a little bit about alternative solutions that meet all of the needs that have been stated. That could be really possible, but I do think it would require waiting a couple of months. So something to consider.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, with none, I'd open it up for a motion, and I think the options for the commission are to move to select a chair or move to select a chair and a vice chair. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I believe a motion's been made, I believe.
Thank you, Commissioner Buckley. Because I missed it. Who made the motion? So I have it as a record. And who initially made the motion?
Commissioner Linder.
Thank you. Commissioner Leininger made the motion, and who seconded the motion?
May I please be more explicit, because I
Yes.
think the word I used was I support Commissioner Jennifer Nash for chair. So instead, I think I should say I move that Commissioner Jennifer Nash be elected chair. And that's the only motion I'll make at this point.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'd be happy to second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Commissioner Przonski, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to be technical here. On the last vote we took, we did it by accusation that since no one signaled that they objected, I'm going to encourage that the commission, until we set up some type of different protocol, use a voice vote, because since we're virtual and we're not certain everyone is actually hearing and going forward, I think to perfect the record, it may be best to rely on voice votes in virtual meetings at this point.
Thank you, Senator Przonski. I appreciate that. And with that, there's been a motion to select Commissioner Nash as chair. That's been seconded. So I'll go through the roll. Commissioner Buckley.
Aye.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger.
Yes.
Commissioner Mandevert.
Yes.
Commissioner Nash.
Yes, or should I abstain?
No.
I guess yes.
Commissioner Parrish Taylor.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sealander.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
And Commissioner Harvey's absent with that vote. Congratulations, Commissioner Nash, you are now the chair, and I will pass this meeting off to you to run the rest of the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of my fellow commissioners. I would like to circle back to the public comment that was made, because I think we do need to address that. So we can't, because it wasn't noticed, we can't take a formal vote or have an action item. But I do believe that it's worth having a discussion and perhaps providing some direction that's less formal than an action item to the agency regarding the public comment that was provided. So I want to open that item back up for discussion at this point. Is any commissioner wish to ask any questions or have any discussion? Commissioner Smith.
I'd just be interested before we take action in having a response from the agency, not today, but perhaps by our next meeting to the concern.
And Commissioner Smith, your video or your audio had some trouble and I didn't hear the last part of what you said. All I heard was concern. So what, could you repeat yourself?
Yeah, I just said I'd be interested in having a sort of formal-ish response from the agency regarding the concern.
Does anyone else, thank you. Does anyone else have any other comment or questions that they would like to make?
I would just say I would expect to hear a response to this from the agency by the time of our next meeting. I would like to hear that from them. That's not a formal motion or anything. That's just a comment that I'm saying that I would like to know more about this because historically, for years, there's been a level of lack of confidence in communications. Some of it, whether it's lack of confidence in competency or diligence or misfeasance, malfeasance, it really doesn't matter. There's a lack of confidence and trust in the information that the agency has transmitted to providers. I believe it's getting better. I really do. But things like this do happen and they need to be addressed quickly and honestly and straightforwardly and not dancing around the items. One thing I would note here, I guess, since we're talking about this, is I was reading the 54-page document that we had. One of the paragraphs that I read sort of made my gut wrench a little bit, and I realized it wasn't substantive. It was sort of maybe formalized, but they were talking about the same thing, a lack of trust in the agency by the providers, and the way the agency phrased it was sort of sounded like, I'm sorry if I offended anyone, sort of apology. And it was the tone and the framing of this where, well, the providers perceive this, not the providers state it or believe it, but they simply perceive it. And it's that sort of level of communication, probably totally meaningless, wasn't even thought about by the person who drafted this document, probably. But it just goes to show that the level of trust we need to rebuild this and strengthen the ties, strengthen the level of confidence so we can move forward confidently and make sure the providers can do their jobs with complete trust in each other. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair Nash. I was very alarmed to read the written comments this morning. I have a lot of respect for actually everybody involved there, for Mr. Comstock, for Ms. Jackson. She's been at the agency forever. And so I don't take this as a personal affront to what Ms. Jackson said, but I'm very worried about if there are staff that are no longer here about what they did or didn't do. So I would really like to know the agency's response. I think this dovetails really pretty closely with the complete failure to launch the FCMS system and project managers quitting over the summer and nobody saying that was happening. I'm on the FCMS steering committee. The last meeting was in June, I think, and there was no explanation for why we didn't have 6 more meetings the rest of the year. So like the ball was completely dropped. And I think it would be very helpful in rebuilding trust to know why. I have guesses and I can make sort of informed thought about, well, these people aren't here anymore. Maybe it's their fault, but it would be really helpful to know. And I think it'd be helpful for the legislature to know how it is that we're spending those funds and how we can get an FCMS system up on board. Because I know that ties to so many things, including provider confidence with investigators and attorneys. So I'd be very interested in the agency's response.
Thank you. And we will talk about the FCMS issue a little bit later in the meeting. But I would just add that the remediation plan that we have provided to us in the materials today addressed the need to develop a formal complaint policy to deal with issues like this. And I would think that that might be something that the governance committee might also take up, is the development. If that committee doesn't actually do that work, recommendations for how that work gets done. But this is just a really good opportunity for us to formalize how it is that complaints are to be handled, because oftentimes public comments are complaints, and we receive complaints through written public comment and also through oral public comment, and we need to have a mechanism for providing feedback. So I based on my experience being on the commission, I believe the agency will provide a response to this. And given the nature of the public complaint, I would say the public comment, even if the director provides us with a response before the next meeting, I would suggest that in her executive director's report at our next meeting, which she will provide an executive director's report that just updates the commission at every meeting about things that have been happening, that she include information about this in her executive director's report so that the public knows what that feedback and what the response has been. Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just I've mentioned this in the past. I just want to make sure we emphasize not just complaints, but I'm hoping that the agency will have a communication process that's very clear, that if a provider or anyone else communicates with the agency, what is the process for getting back to that person? It's not just this agency. I expect all state agencies to have the ability and the responsibility to respond to communications.
Thank you. Very well taken. Is there any further discussion before about this before we move on to the next item? Mr. Dietrich, did you want to say anything? You didn't raise your hand, but you're also not muted, so I didn't know if you wanted to comment. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item on our agenda is authorization of a governance subcommittee, and Mr. Dietrich can address that.
Thank you, Chair Nash, members of the commission. My name is Eric Dietrich. The commission provides oversight to the agency's work, and the workload for this agency is significant. The use of subcommittees is one way to streamline information flow and discussion between staff and commission members. Commission subcommittees could gather information and make recommendations to the full commission. In order to establish good governance, subcommittees should have specific charges that relate to the agency's most pressing work. Agency staff is recommending that the commission approve the creation of a governance subcommittee to be charged with gathering information and making recommendations to the full commission on commission bylaws, the authorization of additional subcommittees, and any additional actions that will ensure good governance of the agency. The subcommittee should have no more than 4 voting commission members and should only consist of commission members. I do think it would be appropriate for both voting and non-voting members to be on the subcommittee. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Nash.
Thank you. And just for kind of point of order, procedural things going forward, I would like to call for a motion for these action items and then a second, and then open it up for discussion. We've traditionally kind of discussed things ahead of time and then had a motion, and I think it just makes more sense to do it the other way around, just from a governance perspective. So with that, I will ask, is there and typically as the chair, I don't want to be the person making the motion. So is there a motion for the authorization of a governance subcommittee?
I will I move the commission authorize the governance subcommittee that is charged with gathering information and making recommendations to the full committee on 1, commissioning bylaws, and 2, the authorization of additional commission subcommittees, and 3, any additional actions that will ensure good governance of the OPTC. I further move that it shall have no more than 4 voting commission members, should only consist of commission members, both voting and non-voting are eligible for that. And the chair is authorized to select those subcommittee members.
Commissioner Harris makes a motion. Is there a second for the motion?
Madam Chair, that was a heck of a motion. I'd be glad to second it.
It was indeed. Commissioner Buckley seconds the motion. Do we have some discussion about that? Well, nobody's raising their hand, so I'll put out the call. Who wants to be on the subcommittee? Commissioner Wright is indicating that she would like to be on the subcommittee. Commissioner Vandenberg, Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Reinhardt. Well, Commissioner Parrish Taylor, you have to be on the subcommittee.
Do I though?
It's your, yes, you do. It's your thing. You've been talking about a year and a half.
I want to make space for other leadership. Sure. It just depends on the time because I do have grad school in the evenings, Tuesday, Wednesday, so it would have to be outside of that.
Well, I don't want to, I mean, I think you should be on the committee, but I also, I mean, I respect your time commitments and the difficulties that you have. So please don't feel like I'm making you overcommit.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right, I think that's 4 voting members if I counted correctly. Commissioner Vandenberg, Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Parrish Taylor, and Commissioner Smith, and 1 non-voting member, Commissioner Wright. Does any other non-voting member wish to be on the governance committee? Were you raising your hand, Commissioner Prozansky, or were you adjusting your camera?
Now I'm unmuting myself. No, I was not. I have another committee that I am going to volunteer to serve on. And it sounds like we have a very good group already that have already volunteered. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I think that's the subcommittee. According to the motion, I get to appoint the members of the subcommittee, and that's who I'm going to appoint, just so we all know. And then I will coordinate for the first meeting. I'll help coordinate when people are available and get that set up. And then after that, what I would ask is that you elect a chair of your subcommittee and that you coordinate among yourselves when you meet. Ideally, I would like for you to meet at least once before the February meeting and at least twice before the March retreat, and hopefully more than that, and to bring recommendations. You can't vote on things or take action, but you make recommendations to the commission. To make a recommendation to the commission for the March retreat of bylaws, and circulate those as appropriate, and you can work with Mr. Dietrich to figure out how to do that appropriately with the public meeting requirements. Mr. Dietrich, is there anything else that I have not addressed in that regard?
No, Chair Nash, we'll work with you to get a final document with the names of the subcommittee members on it and work with those commission members to get meetings on their calendars.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, moving on to the next action item, which is approval of the meeting schedule. Right after I said I was going to make a motion, have a motion and a second first. Well, let's do that. And then we can discuss whether or not we have any questions or concerns about the dates and times proposed. So we have in our materials a proposed schedule for, I believe, 10 meetings, if I counted right. 9 meetings. And 3 of those are in person and the remainder are virtual. And before we talk about the substance of the dates and times, is there a motion to approve that meeting schedule? Commissioner Buckley or
I would make the motion for you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Buckley makes the motion. Is there a second motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. And that's Commissioner Harris who
Yes,
seconded.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes, thank you. So let's discuss, is there any discussion about the dates, times? We did have a brief discussion as allowed before the meeting commenced that we wanted the meeting times to be for the virtual meetings to be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Generally speaking, on the days that were scheduled for the virtual meeting. I also just raised the question as to whether March 21, 22, which is identified in the materials as a Wednesday, Thursday, but in reality is a Thursday, Friday, if the suggestion is to meet on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, so to obtain some clarification in that regard. Commissioner Leininger, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Nash. And I generally approve of this schedule. I expect I won't have a conflict except in March. I believe it would be preferable to have the retreat on the Wednesday and Thursday. I expect that's the intent. There was just a typo. The Wednesday, the 20th of March, the Thursday, the 21st of March. On Thursday, the 21st, I'm not available because of a conflict at the University of Oregon. On Friday, the 22nd, I have a conference at the University of Georgia, but also that's the Friday preceding spring break, which is often problematic for people with school-age kids. So I just wanted to let fellow commissioners know I wouldn't be available on the Thursday, but other than that, I don't see a conflict with my schedule. And thanks for considering my concerns.
Thank you. I think you're right. When we met, we talked about it being Wednesday, Thursday. Mr. Dietrich, do you have information about that?
My Chair Nash, my expectation is that it's Wednesday, Thursday, given the spring break scenario. And I know we were really trying to avoid as many Friday meetings in general, and particularly that one. Aside from the time of the meetings that we need to figure out, one thing that would be helpful for us as staff too is these meetings are labeled in person when we know we intend that they be in person, and the rest are labeled virtual. We can do hybrid meetings. And at the retreat, we had a discussion about whether we should attempt to do hybrid meetings for those who can make it in person, and how that plays out with those who aren't able to make it in person versus just a complete virtual meeting when there is no in-person option. And I think it'd be helpful for us to hear commissioners' thoughts on that issue.
Thank you. I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense to have hybrid meetings, especially for the meetings that are identified as being in person. So that if someone can't make it in person, they can be there virtually, which I think is particularly important for people who don't live in the metropolitan area. Senator Prozansky.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I also have looked at the calendars. It looks like I should be able to make most, if not all of the meetings. I did want to alert that the one that's proposed in September 18th, without seeing the legislative calendar, that may be in the middle of the legislative days, because we normally have a set of legislative days in September, and usually it is mid-month.
That's a good point. And I would anticipate that if that happened, we'd move the meeting because of course agency staff would not be available, chair would not be available, you would not be available, Representative Evans would not be available. Many other people who have, I'm sure Commissioner Parrish Taylor would not be available because of other obligations. So that we would move that. Commissioner Wright.
The meeting proposed that we're talking about in March 20th and the 21st, the location of that, was that in Portland or?
in Portland, and I believe the discussion is to have it in East Portland, East County. But we
Okay.
haven't solidified the location yet.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also say, I looked at the schedule and I had some concerns about just the cadence of the schedule, which I discussed with Mr. Dietrich, and I know he was going to talk to Director Camphy about that. And the first one is, we have a meeting, we have the retreat scheduled March 20th, 21st. Then the next meeting isn't until May. And I thought that probably was not a great idea, because we'd like to take the momentum coming out of the retreat to move forward, and waiting 8 weeks to have a meeting didn't seem like it might be a really useful way to do that. And then right after that, there is a June 6th meeting. So 3 weeks later, less than 3 weeks later in Bend. And that's because that's when the summer conference is in Bend. So it would make sense to me to move that May 15th meeting earlier. So I would just flag that I've asked Mr. Dietrich to talk with Director Camphy about moving that May meeting to the first week of May, as opposed to mid-May. Mr. Dietrich?
Yeah, Chair Nash, this is Eric Dietrich. I did check in yesterday with the team of folks who worked on this. And historically, we've always done our meetings the third week of the month. And, there's obviously some deviations that are centered around things like OCDLA conferences. And this one in particular, because we had to get off to a quick start of the year. But that's the reason it's scheduled for the 15th. We could move it to the 8th or the 1st. That would be no problem.
Yeah, so I'll talk with Director Camphy about that, and we'll kind of give that feedback. All right. So with that discussion generally, I'm sorry, Commissioner Wright, did you have another comment or question?
Sorry, the only struggle we might have with moving that to the beginning of May is that that may interfere with the juvenile law conference, which is typically at the beginning of May in Newport, and that's a required attendance for me.
We'll work around that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point, and we'll make sure that we make sure that it doesn't conflict with that. Or, well, yes, we'll make sure it doesn't conflict with that. All right. Now that there's been a motion and a second, I think that I'm going to call for a vote, and this is not well, actually, yes, I'm going to have Mr. Dietrich call for an individual roll call vote.
Just 1 second here. Commissioner Buckley.
Well, can I just get a clarification? Are we voting now for all the dates that are listed, even though we know that it's going to change? If we need to have the motion in order to get into the process of having a schedule that can then be changed to adjust to the concerns being raised, then I will say yes.
Yes, I think that makes most sense. Let's adopt this so people can get these dates on their calendars. And then if we adjust particularly that May meeting, and I intend to do that very, very soon within the next couple of weeks, then we can adjust the schedule. But I think it helps, especially, well, for all of us, frankly, to be able to have most, if not all, of the dates set on the calendar.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger?
Yes, on the assumption that a hybrid option will be available for in-person meetings. I intended to go to them, but I'm glad that we'll have the hybrid option.
And I will clarify that the public meeting statute now require that public meetings have an hybrid option. So we will always have a hybrid option. We will always make sure that happens. Commissioner Vandenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Nash?
Yes.
Commissioner Parrish-Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Sealander?
No.
And Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey
Sealander
Jr. was absent.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Sealander, can you tell me what concerns you have, if any?
Yes, I don't
obviously not
know.
concerned.
I don't know how we can have a vote on a tentative schedule that's going to be changed. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I think the intention is to change only one of those, and it's the May meeting, but I understand. I understand. All right, thank you.
And with that, I'll just note that the vote passes 7-1 with one absence, and that the commission has authorized the dates as a tentative schedule with the understanding that the chair and the director can move dates as needed.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to the approval of draft legislative reports. And I think what makes sense to move this item forward is to have Ms. Taylor, who is the governmental relations manager, and Mr. Amador, who's wearing about 14 hats right now, present the background information about the purpose of these reports, why they are before the commission, what the deadlines are for submission to the legislature, and then, so that background information, and then individually present the reports one by one, and I want to take them up one by one. Okay, so with that, Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nash. I think that makes a lot of sense. My name is Lisa Taylor. I'm the Government Relations Manager for OPDC. And the reports we have before you today, first of all, I'd like to recognize that there are about 100 pages of report material, and you all have been commissioners for 5 days. That is not our intention for most meetings when we're turning in reports for you guys to review. Our intention is to give you time to actually look at the material and give us constructive feedback on these reports. But because of timing and when things are due, and this being the first meeting, this is just kind of the situation we're in right now. These reports are due. These are the reports that we're turning in for the February short session, and they're due to LFO by the 16th of this month. And that's the general cadence that you're going to see with legislative reports. We usually turn them in about a month prior to when they're going to be heard at the legislature. So about a month before the legislative days or the session, and that's to give Legislative Fiscal Office time to review them and write their own recommendation and report about our report. So the reports that we have today are the FCMS report, the Quality Management Plan, the Remediation report, which this is our second iteration because these are due quarterly, and then the Audits Plan. I'll just note that the Audits Committee has approved the Audits Plan. So it has been approved by a former iteration of this body. And the Remediation Plan has been seen by the prior commission, but we have edited it a fair amount to add SMART goals.
Ms. Taylor,
just going, oh yes.
I'd just like to interrupt for two things. One, this commission is not familiar with many of the acronyms that you're using. So please just, instead of saying FCMS, spell that out, and also SMART goals, same thing. So for all of your acronyms, until everyone's kind of used to what things are, if you could spell them out, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Chair. So our FCMS is our financial and case management system, and Mr. Amador will talk more about that during that report. And SMART goals is an acronym. I don't have it in front of me, but it basically means you're putting down goals that are achievable, manageable, time bound. So you're not just saying, we're going to get better at communication. You're saying we're going to hire a communication specialist by this date. And that's a more actionable and achievable goal. And for our legislative reports in general, what we're going to try and do, and this is actually part of our remediation plan, is to make sure we're in the correct cadence with this commission. We have a history of the agency not bringing reports before the commission or bringing reports to the commission after they've been submitted for retroactive approval. And we really worked, especially with our calendar, with the legislative days that we know, of getting in a cadence so that we're showing reports to the legislature, to the commission, with time for them to review it, provide us feedback, and us to incorporate that feedback. Not having all of the future legislative days scheduled yet, I can't guarantee that's always going to happen, but we're really trying to get into a cadence where we're able to show you those reports. And if something occurs where, you know, the report's due on the 16th, but we don't have a meeting until the 17th, we're going to work really hard to show you at least a draft at the prior commission meeting, even though it would be a month prior, and then make sure the chair or the chair of the relevant subcommittee is seeing that report as close to the date of turning that in as we can. You'll learn that things happen really quickly with this agency, and so sometimes it does require us to say, here's the draft report. It's not due for 3 more weeks. And so we might be editing things as things happen, because again, we turn this in a month before the legislature is going to hear it. So the information in it can already be a month behind. We don't want to make it even further behind that. And with that, I think if the chair's okay with it, we can go into the FCMS report.
Actually, just for this, because we're new, do any commissioners have any questions about what Ms. Taylor's already talked about? Commissioner Mandelberg.
I'm concerned that these reports be submitted as coming from the commission, since this commission barely had time to read them. I have to say that with the 2 long reports, the FCMS report and the remediation plan, I sort of had time to skim them, but I definitely did not have time to understand them. And so I feel very uncomfortable having it given to the legislature as something I approve when I don't approve it, because I don't understand it yet. And so I would be much more comfortable if it was clear in the language of these reports, in the introduction to them, in so many words, that these are reports that come from the agency as approved or partially approved by the former commission, and that the current commission has had nothing to do with approving the content of these reports.
Well, I will say, the former commission didn't approve the reports either. And it was, so we're in kind of this bad timing place. I understand exactly what you're saying. And we're in this, that's actually one of the reasons why I asked when the reports were due, because I think that people may need more time to consider them, but we'll kind of table that for a second, and I'll give other people the opportunity to talk about that. First, Commissioner Harris. Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Mandelberg on this and other sentiments as well, although I'm probably more familiar with this than a lot of people are, because I have read previous drafts of this. But to say that and it sort of comes up with the governance issue, right? I mean, what is this commission's role in this process? Is our role to review everything, fine tune it, make these recommendations? That's a full-time job. We don't have an office next to Director Camphy. We're not talking to the staff continually on this. I think what we can do is say we approve submitting these or forwarding these. I don't know if we can put a stamp of approval saying we've looked at this and we fine-tuned it and we agree with everything that's in here, because that's hard. And that may not be our role anyway, because we are part-time oversight commissioners. We're looking for outcomes. We're looking for this commission to have a good outcome here. And the good outcome is everyone gets really good representation and everyone has a lawyer. So I don't know where that leaves us, honestly, as far as what the motion should be. If these, like you say, Chair Nash, if these have to be approved, so we have deadlines and this is the work product, then we need to approve the submittal to meet these deadlines. hoping in the future we have more time to go through this. But again, the bigger question is, even if I had 2 weeks to go through this, do I have to have meetings with everybody before I can approve these? I'm just throwing that out there as an issue that I'm sort of rolling around in my mind as I'm thinking about what the appropriate motion is here to keep this moving, keep this process moving, but also take the appropriate amount of responsibility for what we're doing here as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Przansky.
Thank you. So I was just going to, I guess, give a perspective that I also would be uncomfortable if I was a voting member of this commission to be stamping approval for something that has just been sent to us and not had the opportunity to do the due diligence that a voting member needs. I do believe it can be clarified through the statement of the reports being submitted to the legislative branch by just stating the obvious that we've already heard as to meet deadlines and timelines. There could also be a statement in there because of the transition of the commission and with new commissioners coming on board, that type of approach. The wordsmithing can be done by the agency staff, and I think we can give enough declaration that the commission is following what is needed by the legislature with the caveat. That's what I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Buckley. You're muted, Commissioner Buckley.
I was going to say the same thing the senator said. I think we just need to put a note on it. The commission has not had time to fully review this, but we are submitting it to meet the deadline so the legislature has the information as best put together by the agency.
Thank you, Commissioner Manenberg.
I completely agree with the senator's approach, but I'd like to also comment on Commissioner Harris's comment. I think that I am looking for more than just outcomes. My understanding is that this commission is supposed to set policy and guidelines for the agency to live by. And by skimming of these reports, indicates to me that there's a lot of policy and guideline setting being articulated in these reports. And so if in fact we are the ones who are supposed to be setting policy and guidelines, then I think it's even more important for us to have these kinds of reports with enough time to do the due diligence and make sure that we agree with the policies and the guidelines that are set forth.
I actually don't, really quickly, since I was called on that, I don't disagree with you, Professor. I was saying, do we just look at outcomes, or are we more involved in the day-to-day process? I think it's a continuum in some ways, and I don't disagree with the fact that we do have policy oversight, and there is a level of policy making and approval that needs to go into, even is included in these reports. So I don't disagree with what you said, but maybe I wanted to clarify what my position was.
Thank you. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that very much. I cannot speak for the 89 other colleagues in the legislature. I think I speak alongside Senator Przansky on this as a co-author of the bill. It was anticipated that the commission would, in fact, be involved in the policy making, not just review. Quite frankly, just to put it clearly, the more that this commission can set a policy and make sure that priorities are being accomplished, the less you will hear from us in the legislature. There are very real concerns. Even this morning, there are a couple of issues that I will talk to the chair offline because it's the first meeting and I want to give people a chance to get people on their feet. But the legislature has faith that this composition of people will be able to approach things if, and this is the big if staff recognizes that the function is not to capture the board, as is the case in many other efforts, but to actually see this board or commission as a functional partner in sifting out what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and in cases where there are challenges, how to communicate what needs to happen to fix it. Again, understanding that new system, new structure, new agency, but I would guard against the traditional view of telling the board what it only needs to hear at the last minute and moving forward, which again, that's not a hit on anybody. In many cases, in many agencies, that's actually what the board chooses to do. But in this particular case, we are to be, or more specifically, you voting members are to be the partner with the agency to navigate us out of this little situation we're in. Thank you again. I'll shut up and go back to monitor.
Thank you. We appreciate your input very, very much. Thank you. Commissioner Smith, I skipped over you. I'm sorry.
At the risk of being a broken record, to the extent that we're taking notes about what the governance committee might want to take up, this is one of those areas where we're trying to find the boundaries of what we do and don't do. And I think it's fair to say we know that the legislature has requested quite a few reports from the board and the agency over the last couple of years. So it may be worth coming up with formal or informal rules, if you will, about the role of the board in reviewing and approving those notes. It may be helpful per Commissioner Manderberg's concerns to put some timelines, and I appreciated hearing from Lisa about the agency's efforts to create some timelines, also to give us the time to read, ask questions, delve a little deeper. But in order to meet the expectations that we're hearing from our legislative non-voting members, I think it's worth us putting some more formal thought into how we want to approach this report approval, so we can all feel comfortable knowing exactly what we're doing and having a process that leads us to sign off with confidence. Just add that I support fully the idea of sort of a note on this report that says, unable to fully review these, we've approved them based on the need to meet legislative timelines, et cetera. And I think that'll be considered seriously.
Thank you. There are 3 reports, just so I know, but yes. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you. I'm concerned that we received so many substantive reports on a Tuesday before Friday meeting, and I'm not blaming any particular commission staff for that. I know particularly in onboarding a new commission, that was kind of inevitable for the first meeting, but it's really my hope, but by setting meetings now, the OPDC will have time to actually prepare the reports in advance. The FCMS report in particular is a train wreck of a report. I can't make heads or tails with it. And I've been on some version of this committee for 10 years. I have no idea what it's saying. I have no idea of the timelines of what's being said. There's not an executive summary that says, here's the auditor's part of this, here's the FCMS part, here's where we failed, here's where we succeeded. It's a mishmash and the timing is all off. So I don't have votes, so that's fine, but I don't understand this report, and I don't see how it can go out now. How can anybody else, how can other people understand it who haven't been insular in the process? So that's all I got.
Thank you. And I will say, I mean, the problem that we had is we weren't a commission until Monday. So we couldn't get materials. I mean, we could get them on the public side. But yes, I will also, I mean, frankly, we've had this problem ongoing with getting meeting materials ahead of time. And we have in our bylaws that we're supposed to have them 10 days ahead of time. And hopefully that will happen, but it has been a challenge because of staffing issues. And I think I brought this up at the retreat, but there's only one administrative assistant for the entire agency, which is a huge problem. And the agency is trying to fix that, but that poses a significant challenge with simple things you would think, like getting meeting materials out, because she's got 40,000 things to do. So with that, I'll call on Commissioner Leininger.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank the staff, and the conversation we're having now is really familiar to me. It's not unique to this agency. I was chair of the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, and this is just an issue that always arises. And I think it's important to keep in mind, like what Commissioner Reinhardt said, this is not an indictment of staff. They have a really difficult job. I thought the report was, for the most part, really impressive. But the challenge I'm facing, you know, if it's 111 pages, I really need to know how deep my dive should be, right? I mean, so for example, just offer one example. I have heard from providers that the FCMS system is welcome in theory. And of course, we share this mission of persuading the legislature to fund public defense adequately. But potentially it could be in certain iterations burdensome for providers in a way that might even present a trade-off with the quality of representation, you know, perhaps. So I had some ideas for including that in the report, which could include just sort of sharing with staff, hey, maybe you might think of a way to articulate that concern. But here I am on page 74 of the overall pagination, 21 of the remediation report. And so, you know, where it says evidence of concern, it says agency has desperate data sources, which is kind of a funny typo. I think you mean disparate data sources, but in fact, you do have desperate data sources. And then it goes on to say, you know, in the feedback section, we need to ensure that the FCMS evolves to meet the dynamic needs of PDSC. Here's where I'd insert and stakeholders and providers. But I don't know if this level of sort of granular editing is appropriate, is welcome. I mean, we'd have to have more meetings. So what I'd really appreciate, and I know Commissioner Smith suggested the governance committee address this issue, what is our role? How deep are we diving? Because you don't want to tell a professor that he, she, they has an opportunity to edit. Be careful what you wish for. That could just be an endless sinkhole there. So thank you for considering that concern. And again, thanks to staff. It's just hard to staff an agency like this, especially with one of the biggest problems that state government faces.
Thank you for your comments. And there, I will say, familiar, becoming a commissioner 2 years ago. I mean, I was in full editing mode and then I was like, I don't think this is my job. But yes, so I completely understand where you're coming from. Commissioner Wright.
I'm kind of echoing what everyone else is saying. I am hopeful that identifying some of these issues indicates that that subsequent reports will be more effective than what they are. And I am hopeful. I think this just sort of amplifies the need for the government subcommittee. I think this is something that we will be delving into, at length pretty quickly. But I am hopeful that the agency is hearing us. That not only can the reports not be thrown on our desk at the last minute, but in terms of the reports themselves, the quality of the reports have to get better, that are given to us in order for us to be able to do what we need to do. Both we need more lead time and the quality of those reports need to get better. So I hope the agency is hearing us. Thank you.
So I see that Mr. Dietrich wants to make a comment, and I'll just, before I have you say that, I think procedurally going forward, that perhaps what we should do, what it sounds like is there's consensus that we're going to approve these reports because they have to be approved with a paragraph in front of each one of them that says we're a new commission, we haven't had the opportunity to fully approve them. We're submitting them because they need to be submitted according to these timelines. I can approve that language if the remaining of the commissioners agree. So we make sure that it adequately conveys what the commission wants to put forward. And then we can make a motion to that effect. And then as part of the discussion, I think we do need to have some substantive information presented by staff as to what the content of the reports are, not just for the commission, but for members of the public who are watching this meeting as well. Mr. Dietrich, thoughts?
Thank you, Chair Nash, Eric Dietrich. The one comment I wanted to make is, aside from getting you the materials in advance, which we need to do, and Representative Buckley, Evans, and Senator Brzezinski are familiar with this because they're often asked to vote on bills that are very lengthy in pages. I think we need to frame action items for you with a one-pager that explains the background, why it's before you, and what's being asked of you, so that aside from having the report, you're actually better familiarized with why it's there and what's being asked. And I want to make that commitment at this meeting.
Eric, I appreciate that. And it may be that you can bake that into the report by doing executive summaries on these reports. And I think that would help the legislators beyond the ones in this committee as well digest the reports in addition to us.
I would just like to add something to that. Agreeing with Commissioner Reinhardt that there was much in a couple of these reports that I found very, very, very difficult to understand. Too much technical language for someone who doesn't have that technical expertise. And I have some sympathy with that. I mean, as a lawyer, I've been accused by sometimes people of using legal terms that other people don't understand. So I know it's hard to get beyond that, but it's a problem when you're trying to communicate with people who don't share the expertise. And so I would encourage that reports be made in plain English as much as possible. And that if there's going to be a one-page summary, first of all, that be in plain English. And second of all, reflecting the complaint that was filed by a member of the public earlier today, that the one-pager accurately summarize what is in that report, including issues that might get raised or disagreements that might be reflected, so that we can avoid the accusation that the summary is not comprehensive and not accurate.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. Okay. And with that, let's do these reports one by one. So what I want to do is a motion to approve with the caveat, a second, and then we can, well, actually, perhaps what we should do is have Ms. Taylor and Mr. Amador present the reports first. Sorry about that. We have them in written format, but let's get an oral report, and then we can do the motion and the second and open it up for any further discussion. So with that, let's start with the first report, which is the Financial and Case Management System report. And I believe that's Mr. Amador's report.
Good morning, Chair Nash, Chair Buckley. My name is Ralph Amador, I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Public Defense Commission. We have before you a report that is an update report. It's intended to be an update. It was directed by Senate Bill 5506 in the 2023 session. It said that we would provide a budget, we were supposed to provide an update of where we're at, updates project scope, schedule, budget, and total cost of ownership, identify current project risks, likely impacts, mitigation strategies, report on the independent quality assurance, report stakeholder provider input in planning and governance of the project, and other information to help inform the legislature on the status of the project or issues that have arisen of the project. That was the intent of the report. That was what we tried to convey, or I tried to convey in the first pages before the report started, and called the nature of the report is what we try to do that. I put in the guiding principles at the PDSC. And when we say the commission, we used to say PDSC, And then we had OPDS, because OPDS was eliminated. The Office of Public Defense Services no longer exists. We have only one name to rely on. So a bit of confusion there. I think we'll try and get better at that. Our guidance was that we refer to ongoing forward-looking things as the Oregon Public Defense Commission, and anything previous to the 2nd of January, we would talk about as the Public Defense Commission. That being said, currently the entire project is on a brief hiatus, as the Chief Financial Officer is assuming the role as the project's executive sponsor for the project. Was stated before, the Chief Information Officer tendered his resignation and was subsequently gone as of December 31st. Once the Chief Information Officer tendered his resignation, both project managers resigned from the agency. One business analyst took a different position. She's now working at the Chief Financial Office for DAS. And the other business analyst has returned from a lengthy leave of absence. So we essentially have 2 staff members that work on this project along with myself as guidance. Currently, the agency is working with the Office of the State Chief Financial Officer, pretty hand in hand as we're going forward, because we're trying to work with to get a project manager on board that's IT specific. So we're going to use contracted individuals. We've received 30. We used the price list from DAS. So we put a recruitment out to a vendor that handles that. It's one that the state uses regularly as co-vendors. And we got about 30 applications as of yesterday. So we're going through that to try and find a project manager for this, and subsequently some business analysts to go forward as we start reimagining what we're going to do and try to get a hold of this. I'm sorry that the commission, for some commission members, found the report unlegible and confusing. But what we're trying to do is just say, here's where we're at now, here's where we stand, and here's how we think we're going to be going forward. In the table of contents, you'll note that we have various issues that we talk about. We talk about the project scope, assumptions, current state, framework schedule. Again, I can go into each of these things if the commission would like to in length, but when we talk about the scope and schedule, the scope hasn't changed much from what it was originally thought of, and we try to line it out. It's a financial management system that has a case management component, and we're relying on some reporting that has to come out of there. The first and foremost thing is financial management, which talks about attorney provided reimbursement claims, payment schedules. It allows to do audit functions and payment tracking through the paper system, which is one thing we don't have. One of the things that the agency does have, and that we make case to this, is we have a whole bunch of access databases and a whole bunch of Excel spreadsheets that the agency's been using. Over the last year, we took all those databases and put them on a SQL server, which allows us to maintain the data and ease of use, and it's more secure than having desktop modules of things in there. So we're capturing our data a little bit better in a more comprehensive manner. But it's still, we need to update those because a lot of this stuff is going to go away as far as Microsoft supporting and everything else. As far as the project scope, the scope hasn't changed. I have a listing of things that are in scope that are listed out there, and some things that are out of scope, just to make sure that we have a good idea of what the project is going to do. The schedule is based on an overarching look of what we're going to do over the next 2 years and possibly over the next 4 years. That's going to be pushed back because we have to find project managers and such and kind of regroup at this time. One of the good things is we haven't spent a lot of money on this project. There's been some staff costs, minimal staff costs at this point. We have some QA/QC. We've had quality assurance and quality control vendor on board for about a year now. We meet with that person regularly, and he will be talking with some of the commission members as we go forward. It was, as far as stakeholder involvement, there hasn't been much stakeholder involvement. And I annotate that in here. There's been one stakeholder meeting, I believe. There was one commission steering group type meeting. There's been regular governance meetings that have been going forward, but again, aside from a lapse in leadership and a lapse of function, and again, the constraints of the agency have not made this a priority. So that's what we're trying to do now. I'm not sure what else to tell you about this other than this is where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Amador. I'll just jump in. Before we have a little further discussion, I want to do a time check because I want to just be cognizant of that we're approaching the 2-hour mark and we have 3 action items to approve the reports, and I don't want to lose a quorum. So I'm happy if the voting members are going to have time and are willing to continue on for full discussions, I'm happy to do that. But if people are going to stop dropping off, then we're going to need to take a vote ahead of time and then do things a little out of order and then discuss. So are there voting members who are going to need to leave in the next 30 to 40 minutes? Okay, so I have 2 voting members that are going to leave. So that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 9, which is really close. So I think what I'd like to do is if anybody else thinks this is a bad idea, chime in. But I'd like to do the motions to approve these 3 reports with the caveats, and then I want to continue to discuss them because they are worth discussion. There's a lot of information here, and we need to be able to give feedback and ask questions. Commissioner Sealander.
I could support all these reports with this language, that the commission approves the submission of these reports to meet legislative guidelines, but that the commission has had inadequate time to review and the contents of the report, approve the contents of the report.
Approve and consider the contents.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
All right. Is there a second for that motion?
Second that.
All right. We have a motion from Commissioner Sealander, a second from Commissioner Mandelberg. If we could take a vote, Mr. Dietrich.
And to clarify, the motion before the commission is that the commission approves the submission of the reports to meet legislative deadlines with the understanding that it hasn't had adequate time to review and approve the contents of all of the reports. Is that
to consider to review and consider the contents of the reports?
I want clarification. Are we voting to include that language in each report?
Yes.
Chair Nash,
Yes.
if I may, could we add something to the end about why, like the fact that it's a new commission?
Yes, I think you could say inadequate time because yes, I think you can put that in there. Was that Commissioner Sealander, would that do you have concerns?
I'm not sure that's totally accurate, but I'm satisfied with that.
could we have
But what I'm hearing is people that were on the commission before still have had difficulty reviewing everything.
That's fair.
Chair Nash and Commissioner Sealander, I really want to get in the habit of making sure there's clarity on what's being voted on. So can you restate the motion with the that you're intending that the commission vote on at this time?
I'm going to need some help on this, but it's that the commission approves the submission of the report to meet legislative guidelines. but that the commission has not had adequate time to review and approve, or to review and consider and approve the contents of the report.
Commissioner, since you have a bunch of attorneys here, would you be able to cut and paste that into the chat? That might help Eric get exactly what you said and help all of us see the words to give the thumbs up.
I understand the attorney part of it. It's the
I'm
that
working on
chat part
typing
of
up
it that's
language,
that's
and we'll
more
try and put
difficult.
it in chat.
All right.
You got it, Lisa?
Ms. Taylor's gonna do that. All right, in the chat, Commission, the OPDC approves the submission of these reports to meet legislative timelines, but the commission has had inadequate time to approve and consider the contents of this reports since its constitution on 1/1/24. That's going to need some help, I think. But that's all right.
Would it also be possible to approve? I would hate to ask lawyers to approve something we don't actually have the language to, but something we can draft with the chair's help, possibly after talking to LFO about what would be an acceptable language for a report we're submitting to them.
No, I think that we need to have the language that the commission feels is appropriate, with the caveat that we've talked about, and not, I think we have some pretty good suggestions from the two legislative members about that we can move forward without getting LFO involved. And I'm a big fan of using the word "and" instead of "but."
Chair Nash and Commissioner Sealander. I know earlier, Chair Nash, you said you weren't a fan of making the motion, but I think for clarity here, if we could either have Commissioner Sealander vacate the previous motion and have someone else read the new language into the record, then we can proceed.
I will withdraw my motion.
All right, thank you.
I dropped some language into the chat that's just a modification to the extent that it's helpful.
Oh, I just did the same thing. Yeah, it's basically what I said to what I was typed in. So I think that's perfect. So what we have is that the commission approves the submission of this report to meet legislative timelines. However, the commission has had inadequate time to consider the contents of these reports due to its constitution on 1/1/24. And that is almost exactly what I said, except I spelled out January. So two great minds. So with that, if I'll even though I don't like making motions usually, I'll make a motion to adopt the approval of the 3 reports with that language at the beginning of each one of the reports. Is there a second? Commissioner
I'll
Mandelberg.
second.
Okay, well, and then Mr. Dietrich, if you'll take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Buckley,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Mandelberg,
Yes.
Chair Nash,
Yes,
Commissioner Parrish Taylor,
she's not here.
not present. Commissioner Sealander,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey's not present, so the motion passes with 7 votes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, now let's circle back to the financial case management system. And I think it might be easier to move this along if commissioners who are present, if you do not know the background of the financial case management system situation, raise your hand. Because there's a lot of okay, so there are a couple of people. So I'm just going to summarize this because I think you lack context to be able to understand the difficulty with this situation, I think. There has been a move for, I'd say, I mean, well, I was a provider back in 2015, 14, this maybe even started 10 years ago, for the agency to provide a financial case management system to providers that would have a dual purpose. From the provider side, it would give the ability to have a case management system for client information, including court dates, you know, keeping documents, keeping time, contact with clients, all those sorts of things. The advantage to the agency of providing that to providers it would also have the ability to provide reports from the provider to the agency that would allow the agency to track very important data points that would then form in the basis for our budget and be able to provide real-time data about caseloads, about time that's being spent on cases, about how many providers there are, you know, very simple information that we should be able to track very easily. That hasn't happened. And it would take forever to explain all the reasons why. And I would say almost all of the people who were at the beginning at the agency who started that project are gone. This became a critical, and Representative Evans can jump in at any time. This became a critical piece a couple of years ago in 19, so a few years ago, when the agency ran out of money because there wasn't data to provide, to be able to figure out that they were running out of money. There wasn't good financial oversight, and the agency had to come back to the legislature and say, oops, sorry, we ran out of money. We need you to help us bail us out. The legislature said, well, that's great. You have a gun to our heads. I guess we're going to do that, but now you're going to have to do all these things because we don't want this to ever happen again. And one of them was this case management system. And there was there's money that was provided to provide a case management system. And there was a lot of, there was stakeholder outreach. Commissioner Reinhardt was involved in that, where, you know, there was a commissioner, a former commissioner who was on the committee who was doing the work for this to be involved and get this up and running. And to fast forward to the report we got at the very last commission meeting, the entire thing fell apart for reasons that I cannot fully explain, but there are lots of them, and there are lots of different moving parts. And we could speculate a lot as to why, but the bottom line is, from a result standpoint, the whole thing fell apart and there's no financial case management system. We lost our chief information officer who retired. We lost the 2 project managers who were involved. Basically, there's, you know, the whole thing has come to a halt. There was a failed RFP. There was the executive director, Campy, brought in a black belt person who, like, excuse my, you know, layman's term, but like puts together procurement and tries to figure out how to move forward. The RFP failed, which is actually, believe it or not, a blessing in disguise, because now it allows the agency to do a specialized procurement and to reach out directly to vendors that they know can provide this system, and ask them. I mean, these are, again, Mr. Amador can correct me all. This is me, the lawyer, the chair talking, not having any insider knowledge necessarily, but it lets, I had a conversation with Director Campy and I said, well, can't you just call somebody from another state where you know they have a system that works and ask them to do a system for Oregon? How hard is this, is what I said. And she said, well, that's kind of the next step, is now that we've had this failed RFP, we can do that. There's a way to go about doing that. So that's where we're at. So I think from my perspective as the chair, one of the problems with this financial case management report is it doesn't own any of that. It doesn't talk about that. It's just this, here we are in the system, and it kind of glosses over the fact that the whole thing just crashed and burned, and that we're starting over, and that we recognize this is a huge issue, and it's an agency, it's one of the highest priorities of the agency, because it has to be. And so that's my big critique. I mean, I've got lots of small ones about changing the name of the agency, changing, correcting typos, correcting the way some things are phrased. But for me, the big problem is, if I'm Representative Evans and I'm reading this and I know that the financial case management system crashed and burned, this report doesn't say that. And so I'm going to look at this with some skepticism and say, what is this? Because this doesn't really tell you what's really going on. So I think that's my biggest problem with this report. And I think that we need to, that may be too late to do anything about that for the January submission, but my expectation would be that the reports would look different going forward. I'm going to first call on Commissioner Harris because he has his hand up first. So Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. I actually second all of that, having been around during those years as well. And I almost said something when the motion to approve these was, but if you look at about the last page of this document, I think it highlights the not only lack of ownership, almost goes a little further than lack of ownership when it says the commission acknowledges there are many factors that have led to the current state of the project. The main culprit being leadership on various levels, lack of focused attention since the project team, the CEO, and the project's executive sponsor have separated and a new commission has been named. It serves little purpose investigating and trying to decipher why this happened, when the same energy can be better utilized working the problem and solving it. I do agree we need to look forward. I think that those who forget the past could be fated to repeat it. I think that's an unnecessary statement in this document. And that would be my only comment on that.
Mr. Amador.
Thank you, Chair Nash, members of the commission. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better. I switched to the mic, and so it doesn't sound like I'm eating crackers while I talk at the same time. So I apologize for that. Commissioner Harris, you are right. The last few pages about what we're talking about, what we're going to do going forward, we're not in any way. I wrote the report. I spent a week. I was given the task of taking this over, and I went through all of the documents that we do have. Has there been work been done on this project? There has been work done on this project. They've identified a bunch of requirements and such. They haven't done any mapping. There's specific things going forward. When the Commissioner Chair Nash said that the RFP had failed, we never put an RFP out. We got an RFP. We had somebody come in and do an RFP. It never went out on the streets. We had the chief information officer for DAS come in and oversee the presentation of it. We had oversight, not really oversight, but overwatch from DAS procurement to come in and say, what do you think? How can you help us? At that time, they said, this is really lacking. And then each one of us who was in that presentation said, we're not asking for what we need. We're not defining our need. We're not asking for what we need. And we decided to go back and just say, we need to stop and regroup at this time. Again, I'm not trying to put, the report's not trying to put the commission on point for this. That's our only name we have going forward is the commission. We don't have an Office of Public Defense Services anymore, so we have to refer to the commission as the commission. That's all we have going forward. So again, I'm not trying to point fingers. We are accepting responsibility for this. It was a lapse of leadership. And when I say it's, sir, we're not going to forget the past. We're using what we have and trying to go forward with it. That's not the intention. With the statement that it serves doesn't serve the purpose of launching an investigation and going forward and seeing stuff. We can do that if that's what the commission would like us to do, but that halts the progress, and we don't have any staff to do that. You'll be taking the staff away from going forward and saying, let's delve into this and go forward. But again, the report was intended to just try and update where we are based on somebody jumping in with a month's worth of experience, pulling all the information apart and saying, here's where we think we're at this point. We have to stop. We have to get an IT project manager on board, get support from other parts of the state that really do this work and guidance, and then go forward with that. That was the intent of this report. So.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Commissioner Evans.
So thank you, Chair. And again, I have to be on record, so I make sure that I'm doing my job. On the other hand, I'll try to use language that is nicer than I would usually use in my committee. I don't know if it's called a report, an investigation, or a seance, but we need to know how much money was spent on this RFP that failed, and what are the clawbacks to get it back. One of the things that is driving people that work in the building I work in absolutely nuts right now is expenditures of monies and a report saying, well, it didn't go where it was supposed to go, and we think we know where it went, but without the follow-up of how do we get some of it back to show that we're actually trying to be good stewards to the public. There are three things that I'm very concerned about having to do with this case management system. One is it possible, and can we find an example from another state? We have this theory sometimes in Oregon that we'll just do it all ourselves, which has not worked on at least 3 or 4 occasions. And again, I think that that's going to be a question asked of is there other case management systems available, and why aren't we looking toward those? The second is I think that there's grave concerns that whatever is going on right now, OJD is not getting some of the information they used to get from the agency. So whether that's a staffing issue because people were working on another project, I don't know what's going on there, but I will let you know that that is something that I would be prepared to be able to respond to at a legislative days or a legislature coming near you. And the third on IT is just a simple question: is there a value for the agency having its own IT framework, or is the agency small, or I should say small enough that it should be carried by DAS and contracts, so that we're not, when things like this come up, we're not the commission holding out there that this software program didn't work. It's actually something that's true to a larger challenge of perhaps untrained or unable contractors, which wouldn't necessarily be our pick. We just happen to be the one trying to get this done. So I think everything that's being said is right. I think the report, I tried to read it, and admittedly, I'm a reasonably intelligent guy. I didn't get out of it the mess that we actually have. But I appreciate the fact that in today's world, everything has to be covered. So, okay. But just in terms of trust, channeling Senator Solomon right now, if you want to have trust, the greater the clarity, the greater the explanation in terms of not just what happened, but how it can be fixed, when it can be fixed, and how we can get some of the money back, or at least ensure that that contractor never works again or gets a public dollar. Those kinds of things are all kind of tied together. So those comments, again, Chair Nash, I'm grateful that you're at the head of this. If I could have voted, I would have for you. I'm glad you're doing it. I unfortunately do need to leave so I can go get yelled at by another public safety community. But have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. And I look forward to reading the review of what happened after I left. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other comments on the financial case management system report or project? Or lack of project? Yes, it is. Yes, Mr. Amador.
Just to mention, we are talking with, we have one of the provider who does this across the state and has one. We talk with the people who did one of these systems in the state of Ohio for their public defense system. We talked with them earlier this week. They're going to come back in the next couple of weeks and do a presentation for us. We have Legal Server is coming on Tuesday of this next week to do a presentation of what they think we need to have. I've made calls to the state of Oklahoma Indigent Defense Committee or Council, Indigent Council. And what I found, because all the research that the representative was asking for, I've been doing in my spare time, is going through and trying to find things that we can go to. Oklahoma is surprisingly structured the way we're headed, with flat fee contracts and with state offices out there. I think I've got an email chain going to have a conversation with their IT manager and their chief financial officer in the coming days to see what they're doing. And they're using something called eDefender, which is another type of thing. So we are doing the due diligence and as fast as we can, as quick as we can, to try and stay on schedule and on point with that. And again, when we talked about the budget, we have not spent hardly just on what staff members we had at the time is really the only budget we spent on this. And I would say that's on page 12 of this report. We're saying this is the operating budget as of November of this year. That's what we've spent on here. So there hasn't been millions of dollars spent. We haven't thrown a bunch of money away. We have QC costs, which are relevant to this. And we had that one cost for that one vendor that was brought in as a recommendation with the black belt that came in and didn't give us what we needed. So we didn't spend any more money on him. We had to pay him for the services he provided. So
that's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes.
No, thank you for the very specific update about what you've been doing in the last 30 days. We do realize that, well, 30 days, I mean, didn't you just take this over January 1st? So yeah, so thank you for giving us the update about what's happening. And I mean, frankly, one of the things that was most striking to me when I joined the commission, I had a real realization about how difficult it is to get anything done in government. And I mean, this kind of thing, like pick up the phone and call someone who was already doing this and ask them. Turns out that's almost impossible to do in the government. So I appreciate that that's kind of where we're headed. It's just, let's try to reverse engineer this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Somebody's already done this. So thank you for that update. And I would also ask that at every commission meeting that we have an update as part of the executive director's report about the financial case management system progress in the last 30 days. All right, thank you. Let's move on to the quality management report, which dovetails very nicely into this. Ms. Taylor.
Hi, again, Lisa Taylor, Government Relations Manager. Our quality management report is attached to the materials, and this report focuses on two areas. It focuses on how we're going to develop our CAP program, which has been something that the legislature has wanted us to, well, formally, they've been asking for us to set this up since 2021, but I think informally beyond that. And it also talks about our KPMs.
Again,
yes, I know. And I'm looking for the official non-acronym of that.
CAP is compliance, audit, performance. And KPMs are key performance measures.
Yes, yep, absolutely. And key performance measures are something that all agencies have. It's part of state government of how they measure the performance of different agencies. And so this report goes through first our CAP section, and it lays out, and it actually, part of it follows one of the remediation plan points around CAP, but it follows how we're going to set up the compliance audit and performance structure. Sorry, I'm just following it, pulling up my document here. So it starts with some definitions, and the CAP division is kind of broken into two parts. There's the policy and procedure side, and then there's our data and research side. Then it talks a little bit about the program review and how they're going to do issue identification, which comes again from that remediation plan. And then it just talks about future development. And as you'll be able to see, it breaks it into phases. We're finishing up phase 1 now and about to enter phase 2. And the goal is to have this up and complete by July of 2024. And it then starts talking about our key performance metrics. These are our current KPMs, and we go over what our current KPMs are, which will need to be reported on to the legislature during the short session. And that last paragraph there is about the limitations of our current KPMs and how we're going to improve those. With Senate Bill 337 and a new commission, there's definitely a need for new KPMs for the agency that are a better metric of what this agency, what the goals of this agency are and what we're really trying to measure to show performance. And that KPM work is probably going to be part of our strategic planning and more work that we're doing in the future with this commission.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions about the quality management report? I have some comments. So the CAP program, and I mean, we talked about the CAP program a little bit at the onboarding, and I feel like this is something we can definitely talk about during the strategic planning, but I feel like this report doesn't completely capture what the purpose of the CAP program is, and how it's supposed to really internally hold the agency accountable for the work that needs to be done. I don't think that comes out as being very clear in the report. And you know, again, we can talk about that, develop it more fully in the strategic planning process. And then the key performance measures, just for people's framework, those are really old. So those key performance measures were developed when I was a practicing provider and was the consortium administrator. I'd say probably like when Nancy Kozine was the executive director back in like, I don't know, 13, 14, they're at least 10 years old, more than 10 years old. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked about two things. One, we're not meeting even the old metrics at all. And two, we haven't done the data collection needed to figure out what we're doing. And I can tell you as a member of the old commission, I didn't know that. And I think Representative Buckley can, you know, I had no idea that we were not gathering that data. Now, I will also say we've had an executive director in place for a little over a year now, and she probably didn't know either that we weren't collecting that data until well into her tenure. So I anticipate that that in the process of, and Ms. Taylor can chime in the process of developing this report, that was one of the things that kind of rose to the top, saying, hey, wait a minute, we haven't been doing this, we need to do this going forward. So, and that certainly I would think would be the commission's expectation, that we're going to be gathering data to be able to demonstrate that we're meeting or not meeting our key performance measures. Ms. Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, this report, I had two takeaways from this report. The first is on the CAP division, the compliance audit performance. When that started, I think it was 2019 or 2020 when it first started getting funded. Then they started filling out the personnel, and it seemed like a real opportunity. COVID hit, a lot of things happened. I get it from the report. People were moved back and forth. I had a couple of phone calls like, who am I supposed to be talking to? My CAP person, my contract person? There was a little confusion even. And then I talked to one person who said, we're not even sure what we're supposed to be doing. But the resource and funding is there. And I think this really does present a really good opportunity to get that right. The one thing I would say about this is, while we have to honor the commitment and the work our current employees have done, I don't want to create jobs that fit people's skills. I would like to create jobs that are necessary and fill them with skilled people. Hopefully that's 99% of the people that are on board, but I think our mission should be to have a really well-functioning agency and honor and increase the morale of employees. Employees are an important part of this. I get that, but I would like to focus on getting the CAP program right. The KPMs, I agree with Ms. Taylor and Chair Nash. This is an opportunity where we can also incorporate some policy, because our performance measures are going to be dictated by the policy the commission adopts. And looking forward, I look forward to our retreat in March when we can actually bring a lot of this together. But I think developing key policy measurements is really tied in to our policy goals in the end. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay.
Chair.
Oh, yes.
Chair Nash, I see Deputy Director Perfecto has her hand raised.
Oh, she's not.
Oh, is
I
she not
can't
showing
see
up
her
for
at
you?
all on video. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I can't seem to get my video to work. I'm sorry. But can you hear me?
I can. Thank you for, thank you, Ms. Taylor, for telling us that.
There it
Oh,
goes.
there you are. I see you on video now. Okay.
Good morning, Chair Nash, Commission members. I just wanted to jump in here. And I've been here since mid-June. So I know there's a lot of history in both the FCMS project CAP, and I don't want to delve into that. But I can tell you that we are doing an assessment that is a big portion of the work that we're doing. And I believe Commissioner Harris mentioned, there's a lot of staff that were here brought in to do the CAP work, and really didn't have clarity on the roles and responsibilities previous to Director Campy coming on. And so we're working, we've got a new, very strong HR team that's coming in. We're looking at positions, what people's roles and responsibilities they were hired to do, what their skill sets are. We're looking at these teams and going, what are the jobs and what's the work that you need to be doing on a daily basis to meet our commitments. And so we're working on those things as well and getting clarity on that. We are working towards a strategic plan, and those KPMs will be the center and the goals for that. We had to use what we dug up and what we found that was here. I don't know where they came from. I don't have that history, but we do understand that that there are some holes there, and we're working on that. But there is just, to be very honest, across the board, there's just so much, and we don't. I mean, you mentioned earlier we have one assistant for the entire agency that also helps the commission. There's a lot of people putting in a lot of work, and you mentioned that Mr. Amador is wearing 4 hats, and as we're going through and setting out these roles and responsibilities for folks and looking at what can we use, like what have we done, and let's build on that, and what needs to be scrapped or revisited. That's going to take some time. And so we're moving as quickly as we can with the team that we have. I've been at other agencies. This is my 4th agency. And I can tell you that, folks here are mission driven and very, very hardworking. And they're all trying to fill holes and gaps as they see them. Sometimes it's really outside the scope of work that they should be doing, but somebody's got to do it. So we're trying to clarify that. And so we will get to the KPMs, and we're working on that. We have brought in some new folks to fill those positions and help us with CAP in particular. So we have Kim Freeman, who is now the CAP manager and is starting to work on that program, and which includes policies, processes, and all of those pieces. So I just wanted to get a point of clarity there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just put this out there. I mean, from my own experience, when I came on the commission, we didn't have an executive director, so there was even a bigger vacuum of leadership. And there was a definite push to do a lot more operational things from the commission. I mean, like, we felt that because there was so much that needed to be done, and there was a real sense of urgency, especially because of the unrepresented persons crisis, which was kind of at its peak at that point. And I think that there are a lot of commissioners that are going to feel that way coming in, like, okay, oh my gosh, hair on fire, all these things need to be done and they're not getting done. And so it's it's going to be really important for us to be able to work with the agency for you to be able to utilize our skill set, and for us not to get in your way, but also for the agency to understand, for staff, I guess I should call staff now instead of agency, for the staff to understand that, we feel a real drive to make things happen too, and get us all rowing in the same direction is kind of, I think, what our goal is overall. All right, thank you very much. Moving on that note, moving on to the remediation plan, and I can just jump in and talk about this a little bit before Ms. Taylor does to kind of summarize and give the background. This remediation plan is really, it's something that the legislature has required of us, and for a long time, it was unfortunately conflated with a different report that we had been providing because they use very similar language. So the legislature for a bit there thought we were not complying purposefully with providing a remediation plan, and there were some ill feelings about that when really it was just a mistake, because there's a remediation and modernization plan, and then there's a remediation plan. And we thought they were the same thing, but they were two separate reports. So the remediation plan is really, this is all the stuff that we haven't been doing the way we need to be doing it, and here's how we're going to fix it report. And the intention is to be honest, to be transparent, to identify the gaps in what we should be doing versus what we are doing, and to have key measurable outcomes and benchmarks along the way to how we've achieved those. And we're required to submit this report to the legislature about what we're doing to achieve those fixes pretty frequently. So with that, Ms. Taylor, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, this is the remediation, again, for the record, Lisa Taylor, Government Relations Manager. This is the remediation report. It is the second official version that we've turned in. We did technically turn in a version before the first version. That is how we got to the fact that we weren't looking for the right thing. That's how the legislature really, I think, with that first report, saw that we are putting in the effort, but that we were heading in the wrong direction. And with their help, we really were able to turn that around and narrow in on what we're supposed to be focusing in on. So this is the version 2, and I would say it's the first full version of the report. So this report is the top 25 issues that have been identified by, PDSC, now OPDC, in addressing how this agency and commission becomes a fully functioning state agency that's living up to the expectations that it has. In the contents, table of contents, you'll see that each of these 25 issues is listed, and each issue goes through a 10-step problem identification process, which is outlined in the budget note. So these 10 steps come from the legislature. Since the last iteration that the previous commission saw of this, we went back through and we tried to work on those SMART goals that I talked about making our goals more specific and time-bound. And I think there's still some work to do. I think this definitely needs some refining, but I think we're going definitely in the right direction is the feedback that I've received from folks who have looked at this. It's definitely gone a long way with the legislature in helping to rebuild the trust with the agency. And I think overall, I think this report is going to go a long ways in getting the agency back to where the legislature expects it to be. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take feedback that we can incorporate into this.
I just say that I think this is definitely one of those things that the commission needs to be, you know, and really kind of has been pretty strongly involved with writing and editing and giving input on. And by commission, I would say when we figured out that it was the wrong report that we were submitting, it was really the chair that was giving feedback, and then the first report went to the commission and the commissioners approved it and voted on it. But I would think that this would be part of the governance, maybe part of what the governance committee does. It certainly is something that we're going to talk about during the strategic planning session, because this is kind of the backbone, I think, of what we need to be doing. And I also think that there's some definitely in the commission staff portion, there needs to be some input about what the commission thinks the commission role is. I mean, I read that and I thought, well, I'm not sure I agree that that's what our role is, but I'm sure, but I'm not a commission of one. So there will be other feedback, I'm sure. Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. Just a couple of process questions, maybe, Ms. Taylor. Is the report received based on a prior report that was filed, and has it been amended? And is that why we're looking at it again? And how often does this have to be submitted to the legislature? Because one thing that could be helpful is providing us with a red line version instead of a 54-page thing. If that's the process. If it's a brand new report, I got it. But if we're just talking about some edits, then that might be helpful next time. Thanks.
Yeah, Commissioner Harris, thank you for that question. I will figure out with our technology distribution systems how to get you guys the previous versions of this report. The last report that we turned in was more of a like plan about this report, and I have the 25 issues identified, and they're grouped into categories. So this is the first version that has kind of these 10 points laid out. In the future, and this is in the initial report we turned in, we are going to have kind of an executive summary that highlights major changes that have happened within the report, so you can see progress going forward. These are due basically quarterly. So we're turning them into the legislative days, almost every legislative days until I believe 2026. So it's for quite some time.
So we've lost our quorum. So just for FYI, and I don't even, I mean, we have that thing about, do we have to stop the meeting if we don't have a quorum anymore? But there you go, Mr. Dietrich.
Yeah, I technically, I know we heard at the onboarding retreat, and I'm in constant communication with Ms. Monson at DOJ, but I mean, we're not in a meeting right now because we don't have a quorum, and there's nothing that says you can't have a transparent conversation.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. So.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Although technically that means we can't ever adjourn either because we didn't have a vote to adjourn, but I'm kidding. All right. Does anyone have any other questions or comments or concerns about this? And then I'll just open it up. No. All right. Is there anything? Oh, we had the audit plan, which I mean, that was approved by the audit committee. It's pretty straightforward. Are there any questions or concerns about the audit report?
And Chair Nash, I would just note that I don't believe our internal auditors are actually on the call to answer our questions about it.
Well, okay, so we can't even really talk about that. All right. Any questions or concerns generally? Anything that anybody wants to talk about while have a small group here? Commissioner Harris?
Yeah, I'll just throw this out there, and it may have been a comment that was just made. Mr. Amador said this, that, you know, Oklahoma's like where we're headed with flat fee contracts and state trial level.
Yeah,
And-
I don't think he meant that. I
Okay,
mean,
I
heard
wasn't-
that too, yeah.
Yeah, because that's
Not where we're headed.
I think that's a policy decision for the commission probably to make eventually.
It's not, it's a
Mostly
legislative policy that's already been put in place, so
Yeah,
we're not going to have flat fee contracting. I think, if I had to guess, what he was saying is that's what we're doing now.
Mhm.
That, because obviously that's not where we're headed. Oh, here's Mr. Amador. Yeah. So,
Chair Nash, and Commissioner Harris, thank you for correcting that. I was just reading off things and trying to do research and find areas that were like us and other places that can do what we're trying to do. Just trying to find ideas. I'm not trying to set policy, change legislation, do anything of that sort other than just gather information so that we can have an informed decision or discussion about a decision to institute a financial case management system.
yeah,
So
that's what that's what I thought. That's why I didn't say anything at the time, but the folks that I used to hang out with a lot would probably hear that and it would get their head spinning a little bit. So I think I just wanted to bring that up for clarification purposes. Thanks.
thank you, sir. I don't need any more bad press.
thank you. Yeah, it's always good to remember, I mean, for me, I think about these meetings when we have them, that there's really two purposes for these meetings. One of them is for us to get information, but the other one is for the public to get information. And so when things like that, I mean, we may think so, oh, we know that isn't the case or whatever. You're exactly right, Commissioner Harris. It was good to clarify that just to make sure that that didn't get left out there and have, 5 people or 25 people showing up in public comment next time talking about how we're going to do flat fee contracting when we're prohibited from doing it. So, Mr. Dietrich.
Yes, thank you, Chair Nash, members of the commission. I know a lot of the folks in this commission are very familiar with Oregon Public Defense and some less so. And I know some of the attendees are very familiar with Oregon Public Defense and some less so. And the next item on the agenda was I was supposed to have a conversation about, and it was going to be a very charming conversation about how much progress has actually been made since I became a public defender and over the past few years. And I'm happy to table that conversation to the next meeting, given the time. But I really do want folks, particularly listening, to know that things have gotten significantly better. And, at least me, maybe I'm just one person, but I'm really optimistic about where we're headed.
Thank you. That's a really good point. And I meant to tell you when you and I talked the other day about the meeting agenda, that I think it would be really helpful yes, I think you should talk about this in the February meeting. And I think it would be really helpful if you pulled up Mr. Levy's memo to you about when he left, because in that, at the back was like the challenges and the things going forward. And I went through that as part of just the review for the new commission piece. And I was very, very it was a really good read to remind me of just how much progress we really have made, even though it feels like we're spinning our wheels. I mean, he had this list of here's what I think we might be able to do. And we could just tick off all of these really big substantive legislative changes, these really big policy decisions, these really big, just different way that we're doing business now. That's really a positive thing. So yes, I agree. All right, with that, I think maybe we should just call it a day. And I will be very mindful as the chair of timing going forward. I just thought that there were some really big things this meeting that we really needed to just let people talk about. And so I just let things go as they needed to go, but I'll do better going forward with time. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.